Hey everyone, welcome to the investor.bet NRL Round 6 review video. My name is Reese, and in this video each week we go through and review all the games from the prior weekend, go through what happened and how these teams came to the end score. Not just looking at the final score and seeing who won the game. It's like you want to know how that happened, and then we also go through and look at the betting data from the weekend so we can take that moving forward with information in the bet finders and the betting guides. In round 6, 5 of the 8 games went under the total points betting line. That means overall in the season now, 29 games have gone under the total. There's been a few big undersides. Rabbitohs, all 6 of their games have gone under. Knights, all 5 of their games have gone under. Sharks, 5 of the 6 games have gone under. Those are the 3 teams largely contributing to that. There are a few sides at the 2 and 4 in favor of the under in the Cowboys and Eels and Roosters. But so far, we've seen a majority of their games going under the line. Home teams won and covered half the games, so 4 of the 8 games. Favorites won and covered 5 of the 8 games so far this weekend. Underdogs who won outright. Dolphins who beat the Panthers. Roosters who beat the Broncos 26-16. And then final game of the round, the best underdog of the weekend, the Tigers, beat the Knights. Overall, this season in terms of ATS betting, we'll bring up the ATS records, and you can view these at any time in the NRL bet finder software. So far, home sides are 27-21 against the spread, and underdogs are 25-23 against the spread. You can see favorites at a small spread are 14-8 against the spread, so they've been covering well. But big favorites when you get to minus 12.5 or greater, only 2 and 7 against the spread. So once you get above a converted try line, the underdogs have been performing better. Looking through the matchup, so we'll start with the first game on Thursday night. I'm also going to talk about what happened in terms of the betting for each of these games. So first game, Dolphins as underdogs beat the Panthers 30-12. Dolphins won outright, covered the spread as an underdog here, and they also drifted out. They were 290 out to 310, so the market got it wrong on the side, but the game went under 47.5, and the total moved down through the week from 48.5 down to 47.5. Dolphins made it back-to-back wins in this game, and now the Panthers have lost 5 in a row, sitting down the bottom of the ladder with the Eels on just a 1 win so far this season. So a bit of crazy stuff, and at the beginning of the 2025 season, Rabbitohs scored the opening try. Big long-range try, which we saw a couple of times in this game. And it looked very, very easy, and that was warning signs for Penrith when that happened in the 3rd minute. They bounced back. Keith McLean went over. Good grubber from Nathan Cleary. He was able to get the ball down. Even up 6-all after that 10-minute period, and felt like, okay, now Panthers might be in a bit of a rhythm. But Tabuai went over again, followed by Avarillo during the period where Alamotti was sin-binned, and that was all the scores then in the first half. 18-6 to the Dolphins at halftime. Straight after halftime, Dolphins went in again and extended that lead out to 24-6. And then Mosley Oda got a try in the 72nd minute. It was a try that they could definitely count themselves lucky to get. They put in the kick. Jack Bostock tried to boot the ball over the dead ball line. Instead, he kicked it back into the field of play around near to the goalpost, and Leota was there, and all he had to do was grab the ball and put it on the ground. So very lucky to get that try. So Panthers just with the 2 tries again this week. That's now 3 weeks in a row they've failed to score over 18 points. And then Tabuai got his hat-trick in a try where Penrith were throwing the ball around in the final play of the game, and anybody who had backed the Dolphins to win by 1 to 12 points, it was one of those real heartbreaking moments where the game's over and then there's a nothing try from a ball flung out the back to push it out to a 13-plus margin. This was the 3rd straight cover for the Dolphins, and also their 3rd consecutive game to go under the total points line. Penrith have failed to cover their past 3, and all 3 of those have also gone over. My notes on both of these sides from this game, so this is something I keep track of in the bet finders so that I have a record of how teams perform. So when I go back through and look at matches when analyzing future matches, I'm not just looking at the final score from a game and who won or lost, but also what happened in that game that contributed to that. So a combination of the stats and those kind of things. For the Dolphins, this was by far the best win of their season, and not due to the fact that they beat the Panthers. With Panthers, how they're playing, you can't weigh that into it as much, but when you break down the stats for this game, Penrith had 50 plays inside the Dolphins' 20-meter zone and only came away with those 2 tries. And keep in mind now, both from kicks as well. So their goal line defense in this game was exceptionally strong. And as I said, one of those tries should have been taken dead and shouldn't have been a try. They only had 46% possession for this game. They had 58 less runs than the Panthers, 234 runs over 2,000 meters gained, 655 post-contact meters for the Panthers. All really strong stats that generally, when you combine that with 54% possession and the field position they had, Penrith should have won this game. So the fact it was an 18-point margin is very, very good for the Dolphins. Panthers only managed the 3 line breaks as well, so not only was their goal line defense good, they didn't give up big line breaks during the middle of the field and that kind of thing, and Dolphins had 6 line breaks of their own. In terms of the defense as well, Dolphins at 91.5% effective tackle efficiency and only 20 missed tackles. For the Dolphins, they have the Storm coming up on Friday night, and they'll also benefit from a 3-day rest advantage going into that game. Plus, it'll be their 5th straight game in the Brisbane Gold Coast area. So it's really, really good situation for the Dolphins as they played on the Thursday night. Storm didn't play until the Sunday, and Dolphins are at home again, and they haven't had to travel for the past 5 weeks now. It'll be. And we're going to talk about more of the games coming up this weekend in the round 7 betting trends video. For the Panthers, their attack is really struggling. 3 straight games of 18 points or less games have all been against sides that rank below average in defensive metrics. So not only is it concerning that they're not scoring, they're also not scoring against bad defensive sides or just below average defensive sides. They've had a combined 96 tackles across the past 2 weeks inside the opponent's 20-meter zone and only scored 5 tries during that period. And this was also the least number of line breaks for them and tackle breaks. So the 20 tackle breaks and 3 line breaks, these are their lowest 2 numbers in these categories so far this season. They'll face the Roosters on Friday night as they look to avoid the 6th straight loss. This was the early matchup. Dragons running out big winners 38-16 against the Titans. Dragons were backed in from $1.60 into $1.47, so the market got it spot on. Game went over the total of 48.5, but the market moved down during the week from the 49.5 down to 48.5. This was a low-scoring game during the first 30 minutes. There was only 1 try apiece during that period, but the Dragons really put the foot down during this 6-7 minute period with 3 tries. Valentine Holmes, Terrell Sloan, and then Carl Flanagan all going over in that 9-minute period before halftime. So once again, Titans having that inability to play a full 40 minutes. Dragons went into the half leading 24-4 and in a very good position, especially went over straight after halftime to push the margin out even further. Over the final 20 minutes, the teams just went try for try, but the Dragons running out comfortable 22-point winners in the end at home. For this matchup, for the Dragons, they dominated this game in quite a number of key statistics. So they had 53% possession, had significantly more runs and run meters, over 700 post-contact meters for the Dragons, 9 line breaks to 3, all really good numbers. High offload count at 17 for them as well, so they're willing to throw the ball around without too much pressure. And in terms of penalties, Titans won the penalty count 7-5 overall, but Dragons won the set restart count 3-1. This was, to just keep in mind, the most missed tackles the Dragons have had so far this season at 36, also their lowest effective tackle percentage. They'll face the Seagulls on Thursday night to make it back-to-back wins for the first time this season. Manly obviously returning from playing the Sharks in Perth, and so Dragons will have a rest advantage going into that game. For the Titans, this was another poor showing. They were in the contest early, during that first half hour, but couldn't close it out, and crucial mistakes and penalties cost them. One thing I love to do is go through and see what led up to points being scored. So if we go to this key period, because this was where the game was won by the Dragons in that 30th to the 40th minute. So it started here with error to Chris Randall when the Dragons were making a goal line dropout. Titans knocked on. Then they gave away a penalty. Valentine Holmes went in to score. Then following that, Dragons put in a bomb. Titans then knocked on during their next set. Terrell Sloan goes over to score, and then they score again on the following set straight after that. So a period of errors, penalties, just cost them 3 tries during that period. And at that point, once the scoreline blows out from 6-4 to 24-4, it's a long way back, especially once you're already halfway through the game. They definitely need to take advantage of their opportunities a lot more. They once again struggled in that forward battle, gave up the most line breaks they have this season with that 9 count. They're back at home this week. Titans will be back at home next week, where they get 9 days rest before facing the Raiders, who will be returning from Darwin after comfortably beating the Eels up there on Saturday night. The later game, another upset of the round. Roosters winning as the biggest underdog of the weekend. They were $4.50. The market didn't really move with them throughout the week. Stayed at that $4.50 mark, but won this game and won it fairly comfortably. Game went under the 50.5, but the market got it wrong again on the total, going 49.5 up to 50.5 throughout the week. Majority of the points in this game came in the first half. It was a good. First thing I want to say is Roosters. This was a good performance. To come back and win this game after losing 50-14 back in round 1, which really wasn't that long ago now, to go up to Brisbane against the Broncos side who came out with a big score last week. There's a few ways you can look at this. Did Broncos play badly? Did the Roosters make them play badly? I think it was a combination of both. I think Broncos definitely took the Roosters more lightly than they really should have, especially being an undermanned Rooster side. On paper, this Rooster side is nowhere near their best possible side they could put on the field. So Broncos definitely just approached it lightly, and Roosters were definitely up for this game. So high scoring first half in this matchup. Billy Smith went over in the 13th minute, and from there, when we had a sin bin, there was a sin bin 5 minutes later. Broncos scored 2 tries. Selwyn Cobbo went over, then Reece Walsh scored. Broncos, 2 of their 3 tries coming during that period where Smith was sin bin. Then in the 29th minute, Gostkowski was sin bin for the Broncos, and the Roosters returned favour with 2 tries of their own, Billy Smith and Angus Crichton. So 4 of the 5 tries in that first half coming when the teams had a man advantage, highlighting how important not having sin bins are for teams. Jesse Arthur scored 10 minutes after halftime. This brought the margin back to 20-16 in favour of the Roosters. With 30 minutes to go, Broncos big favourites. You felt like with the crowd behind them, they were going to eventually get on top and win this game, probably by a small margin. However, they weren't able to capitalise on any opportunities from that point forward. Nat Butcher went over, scored what ended up being the match winner with 15 minutes to go, and Roosters were able to hold on to their 10-point lead. Broncos, this was their worst attacking performance of the season. Just 3 tries, 4 line breaks in this game. All really low numbers for them. 71% completion rates, definitely on the low side, not ideal. They only broke 26 tackles, which was well below their average so far this season of 37.8. They defended pretty well, but did give away 7 set restarts to 1, which definitely proved costly. So Broncos, 6 ruck infringements and 1 inside the 10 meters. So 7-1 set restart count in favour of the Roosters. The match-winning try for Nat Butcher came off the back of a number of set restarts. So you got a set restart to the Roosters, set restart, and then Nat Butcher went over. So definitely proved costly at that point, which kind of broke the game open in those final stages. Definitely an area the Broncos need to clean up. Only managed 1 try in this game when it was 13-13. So that's a little bit of a warning sign there for the Broncos to get their attack back. They faced New Zealand to play the Warriors this week, which will be on Saturday. For the Roosters, a massive win. They did all the little things right. 78% completion rate, which tends to be a problem for them. Didn't give away an excessive amount of penalties either. Only 8 penalties conceded, which we've seen has been costly for them in games previously. Another good week defensively. Only missed 24 tackles, especially against the Broncos side that is very good at creating line breaks, creating missed tackles. And also for the Roosters, only giving up that 1 try when it was 13-13. They haven't conceded more than 4 line breaks in any of their past 4 games after they gave up 16 line breaks across their first 2 games. Definitely have cleaned that area up, that's for sure. They'll face the Panthers on Friday night back at home. Panthers looking to avoid the 6 straight losses. Roosters trying to make it back-to-back win. That'll be an interesting game, that's for sure. Roosters obviously beat them earlier on this season, so Panthers will be looking for that bitter revenge against them. First of the games on Saturday, which was over in Perth at Optus Stadium, and I think these two sides very early on struggled with playing on the AFL field over there. But the Sharks ended their back-to-back loss streak with a win over Manly, who they have a very good record against. There was no points in this game through the first 33 minutes. Sam Stonestreet went over for 2 tries late in the first half, and both conversions were missed by Nicho Hynes, so it was 8-0 at halftime in favour of the Sharks. Will Kennedy scored straight after halftime. He went over once in a very, very good try, but it was brought back as they found some interference when Will Kennedy was catching the kick. But he scored a very similar try. I think it was a set after, or at most 2 sets directly after that. Then, so at that point, it was 14-0 to the Sharks, and they're looking like they could cruise for the final 30 minutes, but as soon as the Sharks go into that cruise mode, like they did against the Raiders in recent history, the other side comes back. Clayton Fuller scored a try over in the corner, which was a play that kind of came out of nothing. Ruben Garrick put in a little grubber down the short side after they were going nowhere. So they got a try there. Luke Brooks intercepts, runs right down, scores a try. Then straight away, 5 minutes later, it's back to 14-12, 2-point margin. Sharks responded though when they needed to. Hiroti went over, scoring in both his games so far this season. And then Thomas Hazelton crashed over next to the post, which was the sealer. Daly Cherry-Evans scored in the final minute, and that was off the back of another intercept out on that left side for the Seagulls. So the Sharks' right attack picked off, and then on the following play, Cherry-Evans ran in under the post untouched. So 2 of the Seagulls' 3 tries were on the back of intercepts. And there's one thing that always confuses me, maybe if you want to shed some light on it in the comments, is how the NRL operates in terms of these late in the game when it's a close-ish margin, when they elect to stop the clock in those final minutes. Some games you see where it's still a 1-score game and they'll stop the clock immediately and wait for the conversion. Other games they'll just let the clock run down for a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then there's only a few seconds left on the clock before they stop it. And it's very, very inconsistent. There's not really a specific rule of when this happens inside the final 5 minutes, we're immediately stopping the clock. Sometimes they let it run, sometimes they don't. It's such a strange thing in professional sport. But overall for this game, Sharks bounce back. Manly now back-to-back losses against the Storm and Sharks. For the Sharks, this was their 3rd straight game with a completion rate 80% or better. So that's good for them. They're reducing those errors a little bit more. They scored 5 tries in this game, which is an improvement in their attack after scoring 4 tries combined across their past 2 games. They defended well, only missing 23 tackles overall against a Seagull side that's definitely a good attacking side that forces line breaks, forces missed tackles. Manly only managed 3 line breaks in this game, so Sharks' defensive numbers are definitely still there. And they face the Knights this week, so that'll be good for them against them. For this game, one thing I noticed when going through the Sharks' numbers, they've now won the penalty count in 4 of their 5 games so far this season. And they've also lost the second half in 4 of 5 games, which second halves, if you've read the NRL betting guide that I sent out at the beginning of the year, the Sharks were the number 1 second half side in 2024. And so far this year, it's been one of their biggest weaknesses. So definitely would expect that to turn around soon. Sharks return from Perth. They're on the road again this week for the 3rd straight time. They've gone to Canberra, Perth, now up to Newcastle to face the Knights. But they get to do it on 8 days rest going into that matchup and will have a rest advantage against the Knights, who played on Sunday afternoon. 1 day difference. For the Seagulls, I feel like the scoreline definitely favored them. When you look at the tries they scored, 2 are off the back of intercepts, 1 off the back of a kick from a nothing play. I feel you could definitely take 1 to 2 of those tries off them, and it would probably more so reflect how this game was played from a statistical perspective. They only managed 3 line breaks for the game, down off 9 last week against the Melbourne Storm. Missed quite a lot of tackles at 31, and yeah, as I said, they were somewhat lucky to score. As those tries they did score weren't really from specific attacking plays or set pieces or that kind of thing. They were just from broken play or mistakes and unforced errors by the Sharks. Manly have now failed to cover the spread in their past 3 games. They'll return from Perth on a 5-day turnaround to face the Dragons, which will be on Thursday night. But they're going to be back at home where they're 3-1 so far this season. Only loss was against the Melbourne Storm. But it's really not a good situation. I'll touch on that when we preview the Dragons-Manly game. Returning from Perth to play on a 5-day turnaround against a Dragon side who played on the Friday night last week. One other thing for this game, the market got it wrong in terms of the Sharks. I was surprised they did drift. They were $1.50 out to $1.52, not like major movement, but I would have expected to see money for them. And the game went under the 48.5, which it stayed at throughout the week. The following game at Optus Stadium was the Cowboys winning 24-16 against an undermanned Rabbitohs side. This game was in the balance for the most part. The Cowboys are running out winners in the end. Cowboys covered the spread, but they drifted $1.72 out to $1.80. Market got the total right though, moving it down from 51.5 down to 47.5 and comfortably went under that number. No tries through the first 20 minutes of this matchup. Ewan Aitken was the first to score for the Rabbitohs. Then Tulagi went over for the Cowboys shortly before halftime, which put the Cowboys in front 6-4 when they went into the break. After halftime, Jai Arrow went over shortly after halftime was converted, so the Rabbitohs were up 10-6. But from that point, Cowboys scored 3 straight tries. McIntyre and then Purdue got a double, which pushed the margin right out to 22 points to 10. Rabbitohs were still in with a bit of hope at that stage, like they just needed the 2 converted tries. They got 1 through Jai Gray, which brought the margin back to 6 points. But then a penalty goal with 4 minutes to go put the margin out over a converted try, which was enough for the Cowboys to hang on and beat them by the 8 points in the end. For the Rabbitohs, they were comfortably beaten in the middle of the field here. They were minus 400 on run meters, roughly, and also about minus 150 in post-contact meters, which, similar to the Titans, has started to become a little bit of a pattern. They made the most errors that they have of any game so far this season with 13 mistakes and didn't quite benefit as much. Like the Cowboys only made 13 errors of their own. Rabbitohs have had opponents making 15 and 16 errors a game over their past few. Only 17 tackle breaks for the Rabbitohs, which is very, very low numbers. And 3.84 seconds was their average play the ball speed, which is very, very slow, which makes it difficult. And that's part of the reason like these run meters difference is so significant. They have a very tough matchup this week. They'll face the only undefeated side in the Bulldogs, who are coming off the bye, and the Rabbitohs returning for Perth are also on a 6-day turnaround. So tricky situation for South Sydney. For the Cowboys, they didn't really have too many opportunities down the Rabbitohs' end in this game. Then they had 22 tackles inside the 20-meter zone. However, they took their chances, scored 4 tries for the 3rd consecutive game where they've had at least 4 tries. Their attacks looking a lot better. This was the first game of the season where they've had over 50% of the possession, or at least half the ball. That's good for the Cowboys. It was also their most meters gained this season and least meters conceded. So all good numbers there. Same goes for the post-contact meters. This is their best. This was also their least number they've conceded. And also their best tackle efficiency at 91.1%. The 13 errors also is a little bit concerning, and the errors have creeped up over the past 4 weeks. They'll go into the bye this weekend, winning their last 3 games and covering their past 4. They have the Titans at home in round 8 following their bye. Up in Darwin on Saturday night, the Raiders beat the Eels 50 points to 12. The Raiders were backed in $1.52 to $1.37, so that was spot on. And the game went over the 46.5 comfortably. The Raiders did it themselves. The market moved down through the week from the 48.5 down to 46.5. Blowout win for the Raiders. Through the first 15 minutes, there was a try apiece. Joseph Tarpany went over early for Canberra. Then Dylan Brown responded. At that point, it was 6-all. But then Ethan Strange started a run where the Raiders scored 3 straight tries leading up to halftime. All of them converted, so it was 24-6 going into the break. Josh Adokar scored a nice try for kick after halftime. That was the first points, and that brought the margin back to 24-12. And at that point, like, you didn't really think Canberra were going to lose the game, but there was a bit of hope there for Parramatta if they could build some momentum off of that. But the Raiders responded 4 straight tries, starting with Hudson Young to close out the game and win 50 points to 12, plus that penalty goal in there as well. For Parramatta, this is the second time this season they've conceded 50 points or more. The last time was round 1 against Melbourne Storm. They did themselves no favours. There's huge discrepancies in the stats in this game. 16 errors by the Eels, just 8 by Canberra, 45 missed tackles. So huge difference there. There's 21 missed tackles for the Raiders. In terms of line breaks, 3 to 8. Post-contact meters, huge difference. 715 to Canberra, just 467 for the Eels. And then over almost 700 run meters difference, and 201 to 136. Those errors contributed to a 66% completion rate for Parramatta and only 44% possession. In the first half, it was significantly in favour of Canberra. It evened up a little bit in the second half, but nothing major. This was the third time this season the Eels have missed at least 40 tackles, and the scoreline just really reflects the statistical differences between the two sides. Parramatta have 9 days rest this week, and they probably need every bit of it. They'll face the Tigers for the second time this season, which will be on Monday this weekend. Canberra, this was a near perfect game by the Raiders. They definitely took advantage of the lackluster opposition, making lots of mistakes, missing tackles and that kind of thing. But you got to give them credit for running in the 8 tries. 56% possession for them, over 700 post-contact meters. They've only averaged 524 post-contact meters across their past 3 games, so almost plus 200 on their recent average. And this was their first game of the season with over 2,000 meters gained. They have an 8-day turnaround this week before they'll face the Titans on Sunday. But keep in mind they'll be returning from Darwin, which the Titans haven't had to do, and will be at a 1-day rest disadvantage. Storm, another big blowout win against the Warriors, keeping their streak going, now 17 straight wins against the Warriors. Storm won, covered, $1.17 into a $1.16 mark, got it right. Game also went over the 52.5, only just. This try to Luke Metcalf in the final minute pushed the game over the total, and it did move up through the week from 50.5 up to 52.5. Through the first half, the Storm were pretty much going at a point a minute, or even better actually. They scored 6 tries, all of them converted in the first 30 minutes. That gave them 36 points in 31 minutes, which they took that score into halftime. They did take advantage of this sin bin to Jackson Ford. They scored 3 tries in that 10-minute period whilst he was off the field, and were just doing very easily. It's like they were looking like they were going to score on every set, if not every single play. And we've seen this time and time again this season already with the Storm. After that point, through the second half, they're on autopilot and just playing out the minutes. And you would have thought if the Storm played the way they did in that 30 minutes, they could have scored 60, 70, maybe even higher in this game. But really, the Warriors got themselves back somewhat in the contest, but also you have the Storm just taking their foot off the gas. Warriors scored a couple of late tries to give themselves a bit more credibility on the scoreline, but not enough for them to bridge the margin back all that far. For the Storm, we know when they have momentum, they can't be stopped. There's no side in the competition that when the Storm get rolling like that are going to be slowed down. They have this pattern where they can just score try after try in just a couple of minute period. They did it last week against Manly. They did it back in round 1 against Parramatta. And this is the third time this season. They scored 4 tries during that 10-minute period. Statistically, it wasn't like a complete domination by Melbourne. Aside from 8 line breaks to 2, most of the other metrics were fairly even compared to what you see when you look at the scoreline. Warriors only missed 29 tackles to concede those 42 points. Melbourne are on the quick turnaround. They'll play the Dolphins on Friday night in Brisbane. Redcliffe go into that game in a very good setup, which we spoke about earlier. Storm will definitely need to be at their best to go travel up to Brisbane to make sure that they win that game. For the Warriors, terrible start for them, coming off the bye to then be blown out 36-0 at halftime. They've now only led at halftime once this season, which was against Manly back in round 2. 14 errors and a 69% completion rate. Definitely didn't help their cause, that's for sure. And just gave Storm the field position and possession that they were able to definitely capitalize on. They only had 37% possession in the first half. Storm had 45 more runs and almost 500 extra run meters in that first half. Second half, though, was a bit more even from a statistical perspective, but keep in mind the match was over. Warriors back at home next week, and they'll be playing the Broncos, who will have a 2-day rest advantage against them. And final game of the round, Tigers beat the Knights 20-4. Knights finally got at least some points on the board, even though it came in the final minute of the game. Tigers were backed in $2.55 into $1.92, and the game went under 46.5 down to 44.5, and comfortably went under that number. So Mark got this game spot on, which I'm not surprised at all. It's kind of probably the most obvious game on paper through the weekend. West Tigers, they controlled the majority of this game and scored 3 tries in the first half, led 14-0 at halftime, keeping the Knights scoreless, which we'll get to in a second when we talk about the Knights. And after halftime, Duai scored in the 58th minute, whilst the sides were at 12 aside, with the 2 sin bins there to Gagai and Toa. Newcastle scored through Fletcher Sharp in the final minute of the game. Firstly, for the Knights, they've now only scored 10 points total across their last 3 games, and they've failed to score in the first half in each of those 3. So now on 4 of 5 occasions, so 4 of their 5 games this season, they've failed to score any points in the first half. They gave up 40 plays within inside the 20-meter zone due to the fact they made 15 errors, which is definitely becoming a bit of a pattern for them this season. They make the most errors of any side, which luckily they can defend, because if they were doing that and their defense was bad, teams would be really running in plenty of points against them. But this number of errors also contributed to the fact they only had a 43% possession for this game, which also comes back to the timing of these errors, the fact that Tigers scoring more tries and that kind of thing. But it's very hard to win games and be competitive with only just over 40% of the possession. They only gave up the 2 line breaks. Another game where they've given up minimal line breaks. They haven't given up more than 3 line breaks this season. So defensively, Newcastle are doing everything you wanted to see them do, but it's really their attack that's a major problem. We spoke about it early on. There's just a huge reliance on Kalen Ponga to give him the ball and get him to do something with it, but teams are able to shut that down. They'll be at home again this week, so back-to-back home games. They'll be playing the Sharks, who are returning from Perth, and Newcastle will look to try and avoid losing 4 straight games. It's going to be tough though, because Sharks are one of the better defensive sides. For the Tigers, they did well to break down this Knights defense, especially in the first half. They did have plenty of good field position and possession throughout the game. Completed at 78%, so did everything like they needed to do. 16 errors though, definitely far too high against better opposition. So an area they need to figure out. They only conceded 1 line break, which is good, but struggled to generate line breaks themselves with just the 2, as most teams struggle to do that against the Knights. Even though they played on Sunday, they'll still get 8 days rest as they have the Monday game this weekend, and it'll be against the Eels, who are returning from Darwin. So that is the look at round number 6. Looking at the ladder post round 6, the Bulldogs, who had the bye, still on top of the ladder with 5 wins from 5 games. Closely followed by the Storm on 10 competition points. Then we've got 4 sides here, all on 8 points. All 4 of these sides missed the finals last season. Tigers, who also missed finals and got the wooden spoon last year, another side in the top 7 as it currently stands. And then there's a big batch of these sides here, 7 in total, all on 6 competition points. So very even through the mid part of the ladder. And then the Dolphins, Roosters on 4 points, and Roosters, Panthers, who are in the top 4 last season, top 3 in fact, down there in the bottom 3 as it currently stands. Looking ahead to round number 7, I'll be posting a betting trends video where we're going to look at the historical betting trends of the matchups for round number 7 and go through who I think is going to win each of these games. So stay tuned for that video later in the week. If you want to use the bet finders to make smart betting decisions, I'll put the link to those in the description. That's where you can also get access to all the NRL betting tools and everything I'm betting each week on the NRL, plus additional preview shows. Thanks guys for watching. See you guys in the next video.